Can we start the evening by asking how many of you here in the audience are from Silvergate Bank? Anyone? How about Silicon Valley Bank? How about anything close to Silicon Valley Bank? SVB? Saigon Vietnam Bank? No? There is no such bank? Okay. How about Signature Bank? Okay. Now, our research staff did a very in-depth analysis on why these banks collapsed, and that's why they're not able to join us this evening. And they looked at the balance sheet of the banks, and they studied it in deep detail and looked at the stock performance of the banks, and then discovered that there was one common reason why they collapsed. Because their names started with an S. Right? And so if any of you come from banks that have names that start with S, I think you need to be a little bit concerned about how the capital markets will deal with you. How many of you here are familiar with the concept of net stable funding ratio? Put up your hands. Gosh, this is quite worrisome. All of you are bankers and you're not familiar with net stable funding ratios? Oh my goodness. Okay, let me ask you this question in another way, maybe a little bit more potent. How many of you know the net stable funding ratio of your bank? Well done. We have at least one hand that went up. The rest of you are not very sure if you wake up in the morning tomorrow and you still got a job. Right? So we live in very, very uncertain days and very, very uncertain times. Now, how many of you think that it is more likely that your bank will collapse because of net stable funding ratio and not ChatGPT? Okay. Now, the question here is, what is more likely to destroy a bank today? The balance sheet or the ruthlessness of information? It was Walter Wriston who in 1969 or thereabouts, in the 1960s, late 60s, who made this comment that the asset in banking is not money, it's information. And from that time to where we are today, we have traveled through a long journey making the mistaken assumption that the asset that we deal with in the banking and financial services industry is money. And we've now arrived at a point where the banks that are collapsing are the banks that could not handle the information about themselves as quickly as they needed to, as decisively as they needed to, and respond to the ruthlessness of the capital market. Then when we think about what is it about information that we are afraid of, ask yourselves, what about ChatGPT are you really afraid of? The farmer was afraid when the tractor driver took his job. The tractor driver was afraid when the combined harvester operator took his job. And when the combined harvester operator took his job, the children of the farmers all moved to town and, became jobless and, hung around and, played video games in town. And so it is that society responds to innovation and technology and productivity that these qualities bring into human society by becoming increasingly dysfunctional. But out of the dysfunction comes new standards that all of us have to aspire to. What is the new standard in ChatGPT? The new standard in ChatGPT is that your children are no longer going to be examined in school for the ability to memorize a lot of information and regurgitate that in the shortest possible time. because ChatGPT does that for you. Universities around the world are afraid, not because of the opportunities and the new possibilities that ChatGPT brings into society, but they're afraid that the realm by which we measure each other is being changed today. So we're now entering a realm where all of us are going to be evaluated on our ability to utilize the productivity that new technology that ChatGPT brings into our lives. So it puts the highest standards on us in our ability to process information rather than to memorize or hold information. And in the same way, the financial services industry is going to be evaluated or going to find its function and its ability to process information, not hold assets. The US economy is moving along even though it looks incredibly dysfunctional to us today. In the process of launching my book in the US last year, I spent 7 months in the US, and this is after 3 years of not being in the US. And the disintegration of society hit me in the face, just like it would, a hot day would hit us in the face when we leave home. Society had been reduced, commoditized. The value of human life relative to each other has been reduced to its lowest common denominator. Wages had not been increased since 1995. Corporate profitability was increasing incredibly because the platform owners had figured out how to use information to commoditize human beings. And so the quality of life in the US has started to disintegrate and degenerate. And just before you think that that's not the direction that we want for ourselves and our societies, let me assure you that all of us are heading in that direction. As long as corporate profitability is more important than the way in which society holds together, your corporations will go through that process of having to report greater profitability at the expense of human society, the ability of human fiber to hold together. And so then we ask ourselves, where is this journey taking us? We don't know. But what we do know, based on those who have gone ahead of us, like the United States right now, is that it's not going to be pretty. We have to go through a long series of dysfunctionality before we reach another plateau where human society can hold together in a meaningful way. And the platforms that many banks aspire to be today are themselves disintegrating. And this is the journey that information is taking us through. It is a rigorous and ruthless journey that leaves no prisoners behind. It is commoditizing us to the point in which that all of us are just a digit on someone else's platform. All of us know more information than we ever did before. We know more information than our forefathers ever knew before. And yet, what is it doing to us? It is siloing us into greater degrees of profundity and biases, and making us into silos of biases, one against the other. Now, the platforms that all of us aspire to, which is the ability to onboard as many users, as many customers, as much information, and then to monetize it, is itself going through a journey where it is starting to empower individuals to start to being able to dictate the relationships that they want for themselves. So because of technology such as blockchain and cryptocurrencies, you may like cryptocurrencies, you may dislike cryptocurrencies, but guess what? The genie is out of the box. That technology is not going away. It's not going to disappear. It's not something that you're going to put into the box and put it away in the storeroom and forget that it exists. It's going to grow and grow and grow. And what is it doing? It's empowering the individual to be a repository of information in a way that was not possible before. It is taking power away from the platforms and enabling individuals to decide who they want to interact with, why they want to interact with, exchange tokens and exchange value with each other. And again, what does this do to individuals? It makes us all even more dysfunctional. The more powerful individuals become, the more incredibly difficult it becomes to hold society together. And the amazing thing about the role of finance in the future of society itself is that we've all been accustomed to finance when it was a help, a tool for society to function. When finance is able to carry value on tokens, it then becomes the center of society. All of society functions because of finance. And it's a responsibility that the finance industry is simply not ready for. Yes, it's not a responsibility that's going to come onto us today or tomorrow or in the next 10 years, but it's the direction in which we are heading. And there are a number of questions that we need to answer as we get there. And the answers already available for us to make use of today. And one of the questions that we need to answer is the information that is inside your institution more valuable than the information that sits outside your institution? A very simple question. A lot of the discussions today were around the ability to harness the information, the dysfunctional information that we have inside the financial institution, the bank, the insurance company, the organizations that we belong to. But today, the information that is creating society, that's creating the scenarios by which people run their daily lives, all exist outside the institution. And for that reason, all of us have to start figuring out how do we step outside our institution, not be afraid of the bigger world that is growing outside of where we exist, embracing it, understanding it, and being part of the entire journey. I say this all to you, people who are deeply involved in the operational issues of your daily lives. Even as you do your daily job, don't be surprised if 3 months from now, or 9 months from now, or 18 months from now, your boss comes to you and says to you that, you know what, everything that you've been doing has been a waste of time because the rules have changed on us. APIs, you thought that you were in control of APIs? Sorry, the rules have changed on us. The APIs have become more powerful than us. And what are APIs? To me, an API is an 8-year-old girl sitting next to me and deciding which institution she wants to play with, and designing her own little game based on what she can do in coding, in gaming, in defining her own relationship. And when we get to those phases in the way in which the world changes and the financial services industry changes, all of us have to learn to be brave, to know that we do not need to fear these changes, that these changes will be dysfunctional, but it is taking us on a journey where we don't know where we will end up in. I don't want to end this welcome note, if you want to call it that, by giving you an answer. I want to end this welcome note by saying that all the awards that you win this evening means nothing for the journey that is ahead of you. Thank you.